There we are. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us at the Virtual American Center for another info session with an American university through our colleagues at Education USA. This week we have Dev Devrat from Reed College in Portland, Oregon, which is near and dear to my heart because I'm from Seattle, which is just a few hours north of Portland. He is the Assistant Dean of Admission at Reed College, and he will be presenting a session on how to write an effective essay for your college application. Before we get to that, please remember to follow the U.S. Consulate in Ho Chi Minh City on Facebook, and just look for U.S. Consulate in Ho Chi Minh City, and we will be there. And that way you'll find out about all of our virtual programs, and hopefully sometime soon we'll get to open up for real and I'll get to see all of your lovely faces again in person. But until then, I give you virtual Dev.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to be able to present to you all today regarding writing an effective college essay. We're going to go over just the basics of writing a college essay and what that entails. So I'm really excited to share that all with you folks. And then we'll leave some time for questions at the end. So again, my name is Dev Devrat. I'm here from Reed College, located in Portland, Oregon. My official title is Assistant Dean of Admission. I work primarily with international students. So should you choose to apply to Reed College, I will be your admissions counselor. I'm really excited to get to know you and to be able to chat with you and read your applications. And hopefully this essay writing workshop will be beneficial in your process of writing applications. The great thing about this presentation is this doesn't just apply to Reed College. You'll see obviously the branding and whatnot is all Reed, but you can take all the lessons that you're going to learn from this workshop and apply them to your essay writing for any college application that you're writing. So even if Reed is not going to be your future home, there's just a lot of really helpful and useful information here. No, the college essay is neither analytical nor creative. The personal essay is a combination of both what the student is a combination of both that reveals who the student is. And I think that's a really interesting thing to think about. This is how we get to know who you are when we're reviewing your application, right? We don't have you sitting in front of us when as admissions folks are reading your application. So this is our opportunity to get to know you as best as we can, is through writing an effective college essay. This is also how we understand who we're allowing into our community. Most colleges, especially small private liberal arts colleges, they really care a lot about what is, who they're inviting into their respective educational communities, and they really value community. And the essays give us a little bit of insight into who you are as a person, and shows us who we're going to be inviting into that community. And then a lot of colleges take a holistic approach when reviewing applications. For example, Reed is definitely a college that does that as well. So what that means is we don't only look at grades, we don't only look at test scores, but we look at everything. We recognize that you're a whole person, and we want to get to know who you are as that whole person. And this essay really allows us to be able to do that. And that's why it's important to be able to write an effective essay. So this is something that we often do with people. It's called the object exercise. Now, if you have a pen and paper handy, that's great. If you could get that out, or if you have a phone, you could do this on your phone, or just do it in your head. You don't have to. But this is, oftentimes we hear students say, "Well, I don't know what to write my college essay on. What do I write about?" And so this is an objects exercise that we're going to do that will kind of help you think about what are some effective ways to write an application, or write an essay, excuse me, as well as find topics to write about. So what I'm going to do is list a series of questions. And what you're going to do is write down what items or values that this list of questions comes to mind as I'm asking you these questions. So we'll go ahead and get started. So first of all, let's start with what's the best gift you've ever given someone? What's something that reminds you of your family? What's the first thing that you see when you wake up in the morning? What is your favorite food? This was an interesting question, and don't let this get you in trouble, but what's something you stole? How about what's something you found? If your house was on fire, what would you happily leave behind? So these are some questions to sort of help you think about objects that are in your life that are important to you that perhaps represent who you are. So I will give you an example of an object that I might write my college essay on. So in my pocket, I have my car keys. And so my object that I would probably write down is something about my car keys. And the reason that I would do that is because my car keys represent my car. And my car, my vehicle, is a representation of a lot of things in my life, but specifically, it's the representation of access for me. So getting a car allowed me to be able to go to college. I was a first generation college student, first in my family to get a degree, and I wouldn't have been able to do that if I couldn't get to school. I did not attend Reed. I went to a different school here in Portland, and the school that I went to was a primarily commuter school, and so I had to be able to get to and from school, and my car allowed me to do that. My car also allowed me to provide my younger sister with access to college because I was able to move her into her college dorm when she got accepted, and we were able to put all of her things into that car and provide her access to getting a college education. Um, so that's just an example of this object exercise, right? Think of it as think of an object that maybe has maybe not a lot of significance to others, but has a lot of significance to you. And how does that impact your life? And how does that bring something to your life? Whether it's some sort of a value or sort of an idea, that's really up to you. Now, you don't have to write your college essay about an object, but if this is a great activity to do, in the chance that you're not sure what to write about, this gives you some place to start. But you can be pretty creative with what you write your essay on. So here are the 5 keys to a personal statement. So fill in the blanks, be creative with the everyday, be focused, so what, and proofread. Now we're going to break these things down a little bit more individual. I also had a thought going back to the last slide. And you may be thinking, you may be wondering, can you write about multiple objects, or whether you should focus on one? And we're going to actually talk a little bit about this. I think that's what that be focused line is really going to tell you. But I would recommend really focus on one object and what that tells about you. Sometimes when you try to do too many objects, we sort of start to lose the meaning, and we start to lose that ability of learning a little bit about you. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So let's start with fill in the blank. So, here's some points that are really important to remember. Don't write a full resume. Tell us something new, and that this is your opportunity to be in control. So, this is a great opportunity to tell us something that's new about you. What I often see a lot of students making a mistake in doing is they write an entire essay about their list of activities and talk about every single activity that they're involved with, and which is great, but it doesn't tell me anything new. Most colleges, when you're applying to a college, you'll do the application on something called the Common Application. A lot of colleges also use something called the Coalition Application. Some colleges have their own application, but typically all these applications are going to ask you to list your activities and all the things that you're involved with. As a matter of fact, when you're looking at the Common Application, or when I'm looking at the Common Application for a student, your list of activities comes right before your essay. So when you write your essay about all of your activities and all the things that you're doing in your activities list and then in your essay, you're not telling us anything new. There's no new information that you're giving us. And that defeats the purpose of the essay, right? If you remember, I told you the essay is our opportunity to get to know you. And so if there's one, you should definitely be proud of all the activities that are on your list and all the things that you've done. But again, we're trying to get some new information about you. If you want to focus on one of the activities on your list and how that's impacted you, absolutely go ahead. The other thing I would be careful of is if the college has multiple essay requirements, don't write about the same topic for each essay, because that doesn't tell me a lot more about you. I'll give you a great example. I read an application this past season about someone who's very passionate about hockey, and they loved the sport. They really enjoyed it, and it was on their activities list, all the different hockey activities that they do. They wrote their college essay about playing hockey. Then they wrote their supplemental essay about about playing hockey, and that was great. But all that told me about the student is that they like to play hockey, and Reed doesn't even offer a hockey team. So then I wasn't sure if we should even accept him, because I don't know if he's going to enjoy his experience here at Reed. So be creative. Make sure you're writing about your multiple things. That way we are we're able to get to know you as well. Keep in mind, this is also one of the fewest things that you have control over in your application. So by the time that you're applying to college, you're going to be in your early senior year. You can't go back in time and change your grade. You can't go back in time and go do new activities. Whatever recommendations your teachers write for you, you can't edit that. So the college essay is one of the few things in your entire application process that you have any control over. So this is where you want to take the time and really focus on it, because it's important that you're getting who you are across in these essays. So I'm going to show you a weak example. Now, this is an example that we made up at Reed. This is not an actual essay, but this is just a weak example of someone's essay who maybe didn't do the best job of filling in the blanks. So in 10th grade, I was the captain of the varsity cross country and basketball teams. I also started 3 theater performances that year and helped with the theater tech crew. It was a busy year. Last year, I started a recycling program at my school and did research with a neuroscience professor at Portland State University. This year, I'm devoting more time to my classes, but still playing saxophone in the jazz band. Now, here's why this is maybe not the best example of an essay. This essay is essentially doing what I told you to avoid, where they're listing all these activities, right? They're doing cross country, they play basketball, they help with theater, they did a recycling program, they did research. There's a jazz band. There's so much information in that essay, and this tells me nothing about the student, right? And most likely, all of these items were listed on the activity slide of their application. So I don't need to have it re-put to me or reread to me. I want to learn something new, and that this essay is not giving me that. So that's an example of the filling in the blanks. The next one is be creative with the everyday. You're looking at the daily versus the dramatic. We recognize that you have not cured cancer yet, and that's okay. We want to know who you are. I was at a college fair one time, and a student came up to me and apologized for not having started a nonprofit yet. And I was taken back by this comment. Basically what I told the student is we recognize you're 16, 17, 18, 19 years old. We recognize that maybe you haven't had this big prolific event that happened in your life, and that's okay. There's a lot that tells us about you in your day-to-day life. I mean, we care about that actually a little bit more than the big dramatic story. And we also want to know something about you as who you are now. If you did this awesome thing, 6 years ago that was awesome and monumental, that's great, and I'm proud of you from 6 years ago. But what does that tell me about who you are now? Did what you did 6 years ago impact who you are as a person now, and how are you, how is that impacting you, and how is that going to change your life in the future? That's a great place to take that conversation. But I really want to know who you are today, the day that you're writing that essay, in that general time of span or span of time. Who are you as a person in the moment? So here's another example. This is also a weak example, and we'll talk about why. This one kind of confuses people sometimes as to why this is a weak example. The summer after my junior year, I went to Panama with my church youth group to volunteer. We worked every day building homes, playing with the children of the village, and developing an irrigation system. I thought I was going there to help people, but really, I was the one who was helped the most. Now, here is why this is maybe a little bit more of a weak example. This is not telling me much about the student. Also, this is something that every student that went on that youth group program probably experienced as well. They experienced the same exact thing as you did. What makes your experience different than their experience? And that's what we're missing in this essay. Also, it doesn't really tell me what it was that they got out of this experience. I want to commend their volunteer work. That's awesome. I definitely am not taking that away from the student, but this doesn't, again, tell me much about the student themselves. And I want to know more. The next one is be focused. So this is where we want you to narrow your scope. It's all about depth and not breadth, as well as being concise. So I often like to think about the topic of your essay in the form of a room. So let's say you're looking at your bedroom door and you open the door and I'm looking in your bedroom and I scan my eyes and I'm looking at everything that I see. So, I'm seeing posters on the wall. I might see trophies or ribbons. I might see books. I might see a messy bed or clothes all over the floor, or maybe not. Maybe I might see video games or whatever else that you might be interested in. That's a lot of information about you when I'm looking at this room. And that's almost overwhelming, right? We want you to focus what you're talking about. So now imagine you close that door and you're looking through the keyhole and you can only see one thing while looking through that keyhole. And that's what we're trying to get at is focus what you are wanting to share about yourself, and then how does that paint the picture in a bigger picture about who you are as a whole person, as well as being concise. First and foremost, especially in the Common App, you have a word limit. I think it's like 650 words. You can't go above that, which sounds like you should be able to fit an essay, but there are definitely people who are writing an essay and all of a sudden you can tell that they started to get low on the word count and they had to cram the rest of the essay into that word count. And it's really easy to tell when the trajectory of an essay goes all of a sudden rapid to the end. So being concise is important, as well as focusing what you really want to talk about and paint us a picture rather than trying to cram too much into one. Here's a really strong example. I wear overalls to school, dark wash denim, baggy pant legs, and 2 straps over my shoulders, fastened tight by 2 copper buttons. I don't wear them for farming, painting, or railroad construction, but for the pure and sweet pleasure of wearing trousers that are held up by my shoulders. It's not an everyday thing, but when I wear them, I feel invincible. Here's why I love this essay. It takes something very common, very basic, essentially pants, and really exemplifies why they're important to her or him, why this person really values these denim dark wash baggy pants, and what they're getting out of it. And there's telling me something about them as a person, right? They have this feeling of invincibility. I would imagine if this essay were to go on further, they would probably unpack that feeling of invincibility some more. I mean, this is why this is a strong example. And this is a great example for you to think about when you're writing an essay. You can take something that's everyday, something that's mundane, and make it really, really special. The next one, this is my absolute favorite slide in the entire presentation. If you take away nothing else from this presentation, please let it be this. This is called the so what. And this is exactly what admissions counselors ask themselves when they read your essay. When we get to the end, we think to ourselves, so what? What did this tell me about the person, right? This is essentially the heart of the essay. This is the main point that you're trying to get across. This will be a thesis, if you will, of your essay in what it is that you're trying to accomplish. You want to make sure you tell us why this is important, right? Don't make me guess. I need you to paint that picture for me. something to think about when you're writing these applications or with these essays is that the clearer the picture you paint, the easier the time I'm going to be able to understand who you are and what it is that you value. Just at Read alone, for example, we get about 6,000 to 7,000 applications a year, and every single application is read twice at least. So that's over 1,000 applications usually. I just looked at the number of applications I read this year, and the numbers in the thousands. So the clearer you can make this picture, the less I have to start playing a guessing game or trying to fill in the blanks for you, the easier I'm going to have to understanding who you are as a person. So here's a strong example of what we mean. I do truly adore lobster fishing. My love for it extends past the obvious, past the fact that I make money, past the fact that I get to work outside in the beautiful summer weather. It extends far beyond the free lobsters and even past the blossoming friendships that I have with my colorful coworkers. I owe a vast debt of gratitude. Lobster fishing has opened my eyes to hard work and determination, and in doing so, allowed me to finish substantially in high school, a flourish in high school, excuse me. So here's why this is a great and strong example. First of all, you'll notice a difference between this one and the essay about the overall pants. The overall essay was very poetically written, I think. I mean, I would argue. I think it was very creatively written, whereas this lobster fishing essay is a little bit more straightforward. Sure, there's some of that creative wordplay in there, but really, especially towards the end, they paint a clear picture, and that's okay. Don't write outside of your own writing voice. Don't write in a way that you think is going to impress the reader. Write in your most natural voice. If you're not a funny writer or if you're not a creative writer, that's totally fine. I still think you can write an essay in whatever your own voice is and get across whatever information that you are trying to communicate as effectively as you want to communicate it in whatever your own personal voice might be. So that's something to think about when you're writing this essay, and when you're thinking about it, think about to yourself, what is the point of this essay? What is the so what? What am I trying to focus on? The next one is making sure you proofread. Now, this one you would think is a pretty obvious thing when you're writing, to keep in mind when you're writing your essay, but we see enough issues that we definitely want to make sure we're talking about it. Your spelling is really, really important, right? Oftentimes we are looking at a lot of applications from really strong students, and sometimes we have to decide between a few students, and your small mistakes here and there are fine, but you don't want it to distract from you the overall quality and content of who you are as a person and the quality and content of your application, right? So spelling is always really important. Thesaurus is not your friend. And here's what I mean by that. If you are not the kind of person that uses these large words and you have this expansive vernacular, then don't try to copy and paste a word into thesaurus.com and replace it with another word, because that we're going to realize that doesn't sound quite right in your essay. And I'm telling you this as someone who used to do that when I was in high school. Don't do it, because if anyone's going to catch it, it's going to be me, because I used to do this. So this is something that's really important to make sure that you're, again, writing in your natural voice. Make sure you read your essay out loud. You'd be surprised how many errors or mistakes you'll catch just by reading your essay out loud. When you read it to yourself in your head, sometimes your brain glosses over some common mistakes and it fills in those blanks to make you think you wrote it correctly, because you're the one that wrote it, so your brain assumes that you wrote it correctly. So it's why it's important to have another person look it over, maybe two other people look it over as well. I would caution against having multiple people look at it and read it, because once you have too many people reading your essay and providing you feedback, you start to lose your voice and you're starting to take on too many opinions and too many views, and you're revising that draft too many times. So maybe have one or two people that you completely trust, that know your voice, that know who you are, that know you well enough to be able to write an essay and provide you with critical feedback. And then lastly, be organized. I am a huge fan of outlines. Outlines help you really organize your thoughts, and make sure that you're flowing from point A to point B to point C, as opposed to point A to point, C then point B. Sometimes that can be distracting too when I'm reading an essay and all of a sudden the topic changes in the middle of the essay, and then we come back to that topic and I'm confused why these things were pieced so sporadically. So just something to think about when you're writing that essay. Here's a great example. Here's a great example of a weak example. So Reed is my dream school. As a small university located in the Pacific Northwest, Reed has everything I could ever want in a college. So here's what's wrong with this first sentence. Reed in particular is actually not a university, we are a college. That doesn't seem like a big deal, but it also shows when you have those little issues that go in there, that shows to me that you didn't do your research about the school. And that then becomes, what that tells me is that you first of all didn't research the school well enough, then maybe didn't proofread your essay. So it's, again, not a big mistake, but something that we may catch. Northwest, you should capitalize that. The psych program's emphasis on neuro is perfect for me. So make sure you spell out these words. The psychology program with the emphasis on neuroscience is perfect for me. I'm engrossed in my AP Psyche course. Common mistake there. I also love hiking and skiing. I know I'd contribute a lot to the classroom. So it looks like we've got some contraction issues. I'm used to speaking up because my current high school uses the Harkness method. We use a place where I would metamorphose into a true intellectual. That is definitely a clear indication that someone looked up thesaurus.com and thought they were a butterfly and decided to metamorphose into a true intellectual. So just another example. This is a little bit of a exaggerated example, but just something to think about. Is sometimes these small mistakes really do distract from telling us about who you are as a whole. Well, that is everything I have. I'm open to questions now. So if you have any questions, please send them my way. I'd be happy to help. It looks like I do see a question here. Q from the Facebook chat wants to know how should we answer questions related to future career choice or job opportunity, such as where do you see yourself in 5 years or 10 years? That's a great question. If you have an essay or a question asking you about answering or where you're going to be in 5 or 10 years, first of all, you recognize anyone who's looking at this question recognizes you're 17 years old, you're 18 years old. 6 months ago you had to ask permission to go to the bathroom, and now we're asking you what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And that's a challenging dichotomy to be in. I mean, recognize that, right? Be truthful, be honest, maybe talk about what you're passionate about and how you're hoping to see where that passion will take you. Looks like we also have another question from Facebook. How should we raise our self-awareness to better describe who we really are as a person, as well as the future self-image? That's a great question. At the end of the day, I don't want you to be someone that you're not. And I want you to paint a picture of who you are as a person. There's nothing wrong with who you are. And all we're trying to get at is to find out who that person is. So there's nothing that you need to do to increase your personality or try to be something that you think the college is wanting. That is the last thing that you should ever do. I really truly do care as an admissions counselor. Who are you, and what are your interests? What are you passionate about? Every single person that we accept into a college brings a unique perspective, a unique background, and unique experiences. And that's exactly what we want to get to know. What are those things? And how does that play into the bigger picture of who you are as an individual? Another question here. What if I don't speak fluent English? Would it count against me in the admissions process? Would a non-traditional student thrive at Reed? These are great questions. And this is a Reed specific question here too. So that's a great question. So a non-English speaker, it depends on the college. Some colleges have some pretty, have some, requirements about the level of English that you need to know before coming to that school. So really you'll want to check with the individual schools and see kind of what their policies are. There's a lot of tests out there to help determine what your English proficiency is. We've seen test scores like the TOEFL or the IELTS that determine your English capabilities. When you're coming to the States, your classes are going to be taught in English. So I think most colleges have a general want and desire for you to be able to understand English to a certain degree, and then we can kind of work around the rest. But again, that's really going to depend on from college to college. Non-traditional students thriving at Reed, or I'm going to answer this question in two ways: how they would survive at Reed versus colleges in general. We have a really diverse and eclectic student body here at Reed. We have students represented from 44 different countries and 49 different states, coming from all kinds of backgrounds and experiences and identities. And we welcome students with open arms here at Reed. And colleges in general usually are also along the same thought process. We recognize that all these different perspectives make people interesting, make the classroom experience more enjoyable. And it would be boring to go to a class where everybody thought the same way and everyone had the same opinion. You would never learn anything, right? So when you have these non-traditional backgrounds, however that is defined by you or by the institution, in my personal opinion, I think that only adds value. A big piece of suggestion I would ask you, or I would give to you, is reach out to that college and ask them what support services do they have for non-traditional students. How does that college really promote community, and how do non-traditional students fall into that aspect of community? So I think these are some things you may want to think about when you're going into a college. Also, things like larger universities versus smaller private colleges have a different experience for non-traditional students. The college I went to was a large state school. We were a commuter school of 30,000 students. The common age at the college I attended was 23 years old. So that's a very non-traditional age for college. So, some colleges are handle that differently than others. So you just want to talk to the school and kind of get a perspective. Awesome. So, and that question was from me on Zoom. So thank you so much for that question. This one is from Vu Fan. The question on Facebook: how do you demonstrate those things that I have not had experience? Oh, that's a great question. Your experiences that you come in with are going to be different than your peers, right? And that doesn't make you any more or any less viable in the admissions process, right? I'm not comparing your life experiences to someone else's life experience. These life experiences are different. So if you have not experienced something monumental or impactful in your life, you can still go back to that objects exercise that we talked about and talk about the impact that that item has had on your life, or a person that's had on your life. And these are still really important things that tell us a lot about you. At the end of the day, what I'm hoping that you all get from this is that every single one of you are really, you have really interesting backgrounds and experiences, and you can write about them, and you can come across as an interesting person. You just don't have to think creatively. I mean, you really have to talk about, you really have to think about, what is it that shares my story? What is it that I'm passionate about? What is it that I'm excited about? And how am I going to convey that to the reader? Looks like we have a question from Nguyen on Facebook. Is there any special requirement when an applicant writes a statement to apply to a liberal arts or other school? That's a good question. Again, that's probably going to depend from school to school. A lot of colleges have what we call supplemental essay requirements. So supplemental essay, so I'm going to stick with the Common App. The Common App has 6 essay prompts. You get to pick one of those prompts and write about it. And some colleges, Reed, for example, is one of those colleges that has a supplemental essay. So on top of your Common App application essay question that there is, we also have a secondary essay. So based on what that essay is, we may require more information about you. Here's something that's really important that you wouldn't think is something that gets missed a lot, but it definitely is. Make sure whatever the essay you're writing about answers the prompt, it answers the questions. I cannot tell you how many essays I've written that have nothing to do with the prompt or don't answer the question that we're asking. And sometimes I can piece it together. I can think, okay, well, I think here's what they're trying to get at. But again, it's a skill set to be able to be presented with a question and to be able to respond to that question. And that's what we were hoping to get out of you with the essay. Okay, let's see. There's a question from, I think it's pronounced Huang on Facebook. How would we make an essay that talks about life vulnerability stand out? That's a great question. I think at the end of the day, talking about the impact that this had on you and how that's shaped you as a person and made you who you are as an individual, I think that'll help make you stand out because it talks about your individual experience, how you took that experience and what impact that it had on you. I think something that we're always looking at is, kind of what we talked about in this presentation is the so what, right? What is the purpose of this? So if you had this experience of life vulnerability, first of all, don't feel like you have to share it in order to get admission to a college, right? Share whatever information you feel comfortable with. If you don't feel comfortable with it, do not share that information because there's most likely going to be multiple eyes that look at this essay, right? And you don't need to write about a vulnerable experience in order to write an effective college essay. Again, let's think back to the overalls essay with the pants. A great essay, write about pants. So you can write about whatever it is that you would like, but really, again, how those strong examples that we talked about demonstrated how those things impacted the person, right? The pants, the overalls made the person feel invincible. The lobster fishing example made the person showed the person skills about vulnerability and or not vulnerability, but determination and skills. So those are the things that you want to think about. Okay, so let's see here. This is a question from me. I know the office is interested in personal stories, but are there any exceptions? Would any story be deemed too personal? Yes, there are a lot of stories that would be deemed too personal. I trust you in your judgment to not share information that you are not comfortable with, like I just mentioned. You do not need to share a personal story or a personal example in order to get your point across. That being said, if that's something that is going to paint a picture about you, you're welcome to share it, but please don't feel like you need to. I'll give you a great example. We get a lot of essays about boyfriend and girlfriend problems or significant others of whatever gender expression. I've read way too many breakup stories. That's fine if that's what you want to share. Again, how's that impacted you? And as long as you can really talk to that, and how's that shaped you as a person? But again, I just want to emphasize, you don't need to share these extremely personal stories in order to talk about yourself effectively. Okay, let's see here. Another Facebook question. Should we try to fake something that we did not really do in the past in order to impress the reader? Is it possible to use fake it until you make it strategy? No. And for the primary reason here is because of ethics. A lot of college, I'm not even going to say colleges. I think at the end of the day, the people that we want coming into our community are people who are ethical individuals. And writing an essay about something that didn't happen to you would not be an ethical thing to do. It would not be a smart thing to do. If you didn't experience it, don't write about it. Yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna say on that. I recognize the interest in the fake it till you make it method. But when it comes to something like this, there's a time and place for that. This is not that. All right, well, looks like that was all the questions that we had. Thank you all so very much for coming to this. Hopefully you found that informational and helpful. Here on the slide is my email address, so feel free to email me if you have any other questions. I'm more than happy to reach out and answer that for you. Or if you'd like some more information about Reed College or colleges in general, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here and more than happy to help. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much for coming today. I saw a few people on the Zoom chat laughing at some of Deb's jokes, which I thought was really good. Yeah, don't ever lie on an application, because someone might ask you about that experience, and then you'll have to try to make up more information to fit the faked piece of information you gave. It's not worth the effort. But anyway, I like that question about what's something you stole.
Yeah, and like I said, be careful with this answer.
Yes, I stole a car.
Yeah,
I did not. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting direction to go in a college application. Anyway, thank you everybody for coming. Remember to follow us at U.S. Consulate in Ho Chi Minh City on Facebook, and we look forward to seeing you at the next info session. And Deb, thank you very much for a great talk. Have a great day.
Thank you.